Hello, welcome to another book report. I really enjoyed this one. The Art of the Good Life 52 Surprising Shortcuts to Happiness, Wealth, and Success by Rolf Dobelli, best-selling author of The Art of Thinking Clearly. I really enjoyed it. I kind of ran into this one by accident. I was picking up a book, a famous book. The Habits of. Anyway, The Habits of. No, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, I think is the title, that a good friend recommended. And this was nearby and kind of just caught my attention. And so I started reading it. And the beginning was kind of like nodding my head, like, yeah, I've heard all this before. But I kind of like the way he put it together. It's sort of like there's basically 52 chapters, each one about 3 to 4 pages long, just sort of a quick little thing like, it's almost like a recipe book, like this, this habit or this idea by itself, if it jibes with your view of the world and habits and personality, can help lead help lead to the good life, in his definition, which I generally agree with. I'm not going to get into the definition of the good life. I'm just going to kind of, towards the end, there were several recipes, as you might call them, that I found particularly interesting, or were slightly critical of. So I just thought I'd share some of those. Okay, so let's see. Recipe 35 was the focus trap: how to manage your most important resource. And this really spoke to me. This is something I've actually been dealing with the last few years, really whittling down my sources of information to just a few diverse but reliable sources, and not letting email. I was never into social media, so that was not much of a problem for me. But I really like how he kind of puts it all together here. So he talks about email, Facebook, ceaselessly entertained, TV, all this. Anyway, he says all these offerings are thefts, not gifts, losses, not wins, debits, not credits. An Instagram post, no matter how beautifully designed, is a debit. Breaking news is a debit. An email is, in most cases, a debit. The moment we read it, we pay in focus, time, or even money. So don't just give up your attention for free, right? Your attention is precious, and you need to learn how to control your focus, just like you control what you eat or anything else. In fact, I will read the last paragraph here. Essentially, you always live where your focus is directed, no matter where the atoms of your body are located. Each moment comes only once. If you deliberately focus your attention, you'll get more out of life. Be critical, strict, and careful when it comes to your intake of information. No less critical, strict, and careful than you would be with your food or medication. So I that really resonated with me, and I completely agree. And becoming intelligent and wise information consumers and technology users, frankly, is an underappreciated and much needed skill in the modern world. Particularly all those people just living in their phones. It's like, wow. Control your intake of information, please. Okay, here we're reading wrong. Interesting idea. Basically, he's saying that when you're young, you should read anything and everything very broadly, all different topics, all different kinds of genres. And then as you get older, you get more. You're now exposed to a lot of things. You can learn what's good and what's bad in terms of literature or nonfiction. You know what you like and what you don't like, and then as you get older, you actually get more selective and don't read more broadly. And so when you're older, you should read fewer and fewer books and read them more often. Now, broadly, I kind of agree with that. I mean, I've definitely gotten more selective, but I also disagree a little bit. I mean, I enjoy reading broadly. I enjoy picking up a book that's way out of my domain just to kind of get the flavor of it, hear what's going on in that field, or that area, or that those world of ideas. So I enjoy still reading broadly, even though I know what's good and bad. Now, I'm quicker to put a book down, that's for sure. I mean, there's plenty of books I'll check out from the library and read a few, even sentences sometimes, and be like, no way. So I am much quicker to put a book down. I'm much quicker to skip sections of books, skip around, just read the parts that I'm most interested in. And I am a bit more selective. But I do like to read broadly. I do appreciate what he talks about reading a book more than once. I mean, the first time you read a book, you're lucky to get 5-10% of the content. And it's not linear, the second and third reading. You can get way, way more. So it's not, in other words, your second reading, you're not going to get 10 to 20%. You're going to get more like 40 to 50%, right? Or even more if you're a really careful reader. So for great books, I mean, I definitely, my whole life, I've always read great books over and over again. Lord of the Rings comes to mind. 1984 by Orwell comes to mind. Anyway, I've always reread great books, but I do it more often now than I ever have. And I do it more in more rapid succession. Before I would wait a decade or more to read a great book again. But now I'm in nonfiction land. But now I'll wait a year or even less to reread a great book. But anyway, that said, I kind of disagree also because I love reading broadly. And frankly, something that's outside of my domain that I'm just sort of curious about the state of the science or whatever, retaining 5 to 10% is about right, really. I mean, I don't need more. It's not my, it's not about programming or math or something that I'm really deep into. It's just, I just want, about 5 to 10% retention is about right. I don't need to read it again. I got what I wanted. It was enjoyable. It was a window into another realm of science that I'm not as familiar with, and I enjoyed it and had fun and learned a little bit. Good. And it was well written, right? So, okay. The next section. Oh, and by the way, just because I'm skipping sections doesn't mean they're not good. I mean, I do recommend this book. I really did enjoy it. Let's see, 164. Oh yes, Matt Ridley. Okay, so here, this is good. This is another thing that resonated with me. I've kind of really been realizing this in a deep way for the last few years, just from reading about great moments in history, and how that. Anyway, don't fall for the great man theory is sort of the subtitle of this section. The Illusions of Changing the World, Part 1. Don't fall for the great men theory. So the intentional stance leads us to interpret the history of the world as the history of, quote, great men, close quote. Sadly, they were predominantly men. In his excellent book, The Evolution of Everything, the brilliant British polymath Matt Ridley proposes a radical rejection of the great men theory. Quote, we tend to give too much credit to whichever clever person is standing nearby at the right moment, close quote. Enlightenment philosophers had come to the same conclusion long before. Montesquieu wrote, quote, Martin Luther has been credited with the Reformation, but it had to happen. If it had not been Luther, it would have been someone else, close quote. So, and as a long time student of history, I will admit that I was sympathetic to the great man theory for a long time, but as I get older and read more history and read more careful history, I do kind of believe the great man theory is generally wrong, although I think some individuals can speed up processes a little bit that were already happening, or slow them down, or whatever. I mean, I think some individuals can have a small effect in the short term, or even a medium effect in the short term, but over bigger periods of time, I have to agree with that. And it also kind of, I'll read one little section. The key to the good life is not idolizing great men and not clinging to the illusion that you can be one yourself. So it kind of frees you up too, right? So it's just sort of like, do what you can, take care of the people around you, and tithe, give to good causes at the global level. Do what you can locally, and give locally too, of course. Try to make the world a better place, but don't live with the world on your shoulders. We're all just. Anyway, I think that kind of sums it up. And that leads right into the next section, the illusion of changing the world, part 2, why you shouldn't put anyone on a pedestal, least of all yourself. And so there's a couple quotes in here that I really liked. So, and they're talking about CEOs here. And so Warren Buffett puts it like this, quote, "A good managerial record measured by economic returns is far more a function of what a business boat you get into than it is of how effective you row," close quote. I love Warren Buffett and Munger too, Charlie Munger. Really underrated thinkers and philosophers in a certain way. I mean, they're not formally philosophers, but anyway, and I love his metaphors. It's just sort of like the boat matters way more than how hard you row. So the key is choosing which boat you get into. Anyway, Ridley is a little blunter. Quote, "Most CEOs are along for the ride, paid well to surf on the waves their employees create. The illusion that they are feudal kings is maintained by the media as much as anything, but it is an illusion." Close quote. And again, I would say the key word there is most, right? I mean, some CEOs can help create a culture and environment and build teams such that they can push the state of the art a little quicker, or a little more elegantly, or with a bit more panache, a little bit more art, and create happier employees, which help the business grow. So I think there is a small subset of CEOs who can make a genuine difference, but yeah, most CEOs are just along for the ride. I mean, that's just a fact. They don't really make much difference in the organization. But anyway, to get back to the main point, which is the great man theory, don't think, don't put yourself down that you're not a great man or woman, and don't get down on yourself. Don't put others up on a pedestal, and don't get down on yourself, right? Just live your life, do the best you can. All right. And now let's see. Oh, and now the first thing I really kind of disagree with. So here's 45. If you run your own race, you can't lose. Why general knowledge is only useful as a hobby. He's basically, he basically says here, it's astounding how rapidly a general education has become unusable. That being a generalist has little or no value in the modern world. And I strongly disagree. I think a classic liberal arts education is more valuable than ever, because it teaches you it teaches you the good life to a certain degree. It teaches you to appreciate, art, beauty, elegance, and most importantly, it teaches you how to think, and to learn how to learn. So, which is the key skill set, I think, in the modern world, right? Learning how to learn. So, a broad liberal arts education can teach you that, right? Educating for a very specific, how does he put it? He just keeps talking about generalists, but anyway, a specialist, I guess, is what generalist, specialist, opposite. Anyway, going to school as a specialist, I think, is actually less and less valuable in some respects, right? I mean, it can get you in the door, but things are changing so fast that the key thing really is the classic liberal arts education that teaches you to learn how to learn, so that you're constantly learning, lifelong learning, and the ability to think on your feet, adapt to new situations, assimilate new information, and use it in a productive way, right? So, most of what you need to know in a career or in a productive capacity, you learn on the job, so to speak, either doing it in the real world or as an employee, perhaps, or as an entrepreneur or whatever. So, anyway, I kind of disagree there a little bit. I mean, I know what he's getting at. Like, you're not going to be a successful entrepreneur as a generalist, but it helps to have a generalist background to be a successful entrepreneur. Is kind of where I'm coming from. Anyway, and then on to the last section, how to read applied to all life. Oh yeah. So that being young, go for it. As you're older, be more discriminating. He kind of at first he introduces that idea with books, but now he calls it the secretary problem. I forget why. 100 women have applied for... Oh, yeah. All right, I'm not going to get into that. Anyway, why our sample sizes are too small, and sort of his takeaway is the world is much bigger, richer, and more diverse than we imagine. So try to take as many samples as you can while you're still young. Your first years of adulthood aren't about earning money or building a career. They're about getting acquainted with the universe of possibility. Be extremely receptive. Taste whatever fate dishes up. Read widely because novels and short stories are excellent simulations of life. Only as you age should you adapt your modus operandi and become highly selective. By then you'll know what you like and what you don't. So while I slightly disagree with him in terms of reading, I do agree there in terms of applying that idea to just experiences and everything. Anyway, and he really is a great writer. I just love a lot of his phrases. So like, when you're young, it's about getting acquainted with the universe of possibility. I like that. Anyway, I enjoyed it. Definitely a lot of thought-provoking things and interesting way of putting things and very well written. So The Art of the Good Life, Rolf Dobelli. Until the next report, happy reading.